As always, we start with the basics. What is Rule 34? Like, what is that? And even if you are familiar, have you ever stopped to think, like, why do we call it that? What is the rule? You know, Rule 34, the actual rule is that if it exists, there is explicit art of it. You can fill in the holes yourself. If it is in existence, if it is a thing, there is explicit work of it. You might be doubting it. You might be doubting, like, if it exists, that means anything and everything, correct? Yes. What are the origins? From Wikipedia, Rule 34 originated from a 2003 webcomic captioned Rule number 34. There is explicit work of it, no exceptions, which was drawn by Peter Morley Soter. So this is him. Quick shorthand version. The webcomic was a single panel comic by Peter Morley Soter, and it was, the caption was, Rule 34. There is explicit work of it, no exceptions. And he made this comic to depict his shock at seeing Rule 34 of Calvin and Hobbes. He drew this to show his shock. We say Rule 34. It implies the existence of a greater range of rules, at least 34 of them, perhaps more, but at least 34. You would surmise that there are more rules. The so-called rules of the internet. Another popular example is Rule 63, which states that for every male character, there is a female version of that character and vice versa. For example, there's a male version of Naruto, and Rule 63 states that for every male character, there's a female version and vice versa. Professor Nux, thank you so much for coming to class today to give some insight on this important topic. Do you want to introduce yourself to the students here really quick?
Hello students, it is I, I'm Professor Nux, good friend of Professor Lando's. We've studied together, we've troubled the, we've overcome the trials
those were the
and tribulations.
days, remember? Back in
Through
those
much
college
experimentation.
days. I'm still
Most
sore.
of it legal. It was, we came out to some truly wonderful discoveries in the academia world,
As you know, today we're talking about Rule 34, and you and I, we're cultured men. Not only are we intellectuals, but just because you're an intellectual doesn't necessarily mean you are a man of culture, but you definitely are. I can tell. I know.
I
over the years, I see that glimmer in your eyes.
I don't know. I got real good Sigma vibes the second I found you on YouTube the first time. I consider myself one of the first people that discovered you.
Yes,
back when you were a rare gem.
Right. When I was half-eaten McDonald's in the garbage like a raccoon, Nux was like, hey,
I wasn't going to say it, but
yes. What do you think the appeal of Rule 34 is? There's so much explicit adult content, even before Rule 34, and even still. We're venturing into all these platforms, right? All these platforms and new territory, but still Rule 34 keeps a iron grip on the culture. Why do you think people like Rule 34 so much? What's the appeal?
Professor, I'm glad you've asked this question. I would say that much like how only a small sliver of the percentage of insect species were discovered in the world, I would go as far as to say that only a small sliver of Rule 34 porn has yet to be revealed as well.
Right. It's like the Amazon rainforest, right?
Absolutely. We are just at the precipice of a utopia of World 34. I really think it's important for the public to understand much more about Rule 34. Like, I'm still pretty sure that people are unaware that Rule 34 is because 3 + 4 is 7, and the 7th commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery, showing you how basically we're throwing away three-dimensional people and just completely throwing ourselves into the internet.
I wanted to ask you, what is the boundary between joke and an actual desire, actual searching Rule 34 to meet an end? A lot of people maybe think Lilo and Stitch, Rule 34, ha ha. Other people might be like, I'm about to have a fun night. But what do you think about that boundary between joke and actuality.
Wonderful conundrum you've just asked, Professor, because I think that, again, much like, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, Rule 34 is either a fetish or a meme, depending on the conscious observing mind.
There's always a Rule 34 that holds a special place in each individual's heart.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask, what is your first exposure to Rule 34? Or if you can't remember, maybe the most memorable.
I ventured and studied so much Rule 34
Right.
over my time just preparing the tournaments. I've hosted 4 Rule 34 tournaments. I've delved so deep, I don't even know where the surface lies at this point.
True.
But you have to realize Rule 34 is part of the rule sets to the internet. If it exists, there's porn of it. That's one of the rules of the internet. So it's supposed to be a meme. It was created as a meme, talking about how there's just so much porn on the internet, and then it became a hub of sorts for people to find and explore and experience in their own way. It's truly a beautiful thing, but also, to answer your question, Raven from Teen Titans, God bless.
See, and this is why Professor Nux and I, we have come to agree on many intellectual fronts. Zone, are you familiar with this?
Oh, of course I'm familiar with Zone.
For me, Zone created. Okay, hold on.
Zone did many things in the world of the entire academic side of Rule 34. Because are you familiar with string theory, Professor?
I've dabbled.
How it proposes that the fundamental constituents of the universe are one-dimensional strings as opposed to like particles.
Right.
So I view the verse of Rule 34, which has become like its own interesting meta society online, as a string theory understanding of porn in general. Normally, people view different fetishes as different niches. Some people are intrigued and interested in different areas. Some people like hentai, some people like 3D stuff. I wouldn't understand them, but you know what I'm saying. But when Zone and Rule 34 came to the board, it proposes the idea that no, we are looking at all as strings. What we perceive as particles are merely vibrations in the loops of string, which is Rule 34.
My first exposure was Zone Sama, artist animator, that gained popularity by creating these animations. Whether it's Teen Titans or Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Zone focused, I think it's fair to say, primarily on Western media. Western media. And that brings me to my next point that I wanted to ask you about. It does seem that Rule 34 is a Western thing, because what is different between Rule 34 and just hentai?
I am glad you asked. Rule 34, again, the reason why it is so powerful, and I believe it, the Planck's constant holds true, is because Rule 34, to its core, started off as a meme. So you got people fapping to actual Teen Titans. Why not actually make porn of it?
Right.
And I do believe that is where it all came from. And since it stemmed from this meme, it's all based on actual things that people have been fapping to. It's just, let's explicitify it. Whereas hentai is its own original creation, and it's beautiful in its own way, like the way Dropout discusses capitalism gone too far, and so many more intellectual pursuits in the worlds of hentai. And that's wonderful. It doesn't hit that meme component that it's all based on the twisted fetishes of man.
It's sort of a taboo type feeling. Like, maybe you could even say intention. Hentai, doujinshi, right? Doujinshi.
Yes.
If you're unfamiliar, hentai is just anime or manga, adult explicit work. More specifically, doujinshi is a Japanese term for self-published printed works, such as magazines, manga, novels. Could be safer work. At its core, you could say, if you read a doujinshi of some Naruto, it does seem Rule 34.
I guess they are parody.
Right. But I think Rule 34 is more directly sort of a parodic type of thing as opposed to hentai.
Yo, what? Did you just invent the word parodic, like parody?
No,
erotic?
No, it's like
erotic parody is parodic.
Come on, parodic. Tell me your thoughts on this. I'm going to present a theorem, perhaps a law, Professor Lando's law of Rule 34 and hentai. All hentai Rule 34, but not all Rule 34 is hentai.
I would not say that all hentai is Rule 34, because Rule 34 is inherently so. Maybe you're right. I didn't ponder it from this perspective.
Well, okay, actually, you're right, because there are original hentai works.
Yeah.
But
But then again,
yeah.
that's what I was saying at first. Originally, I was saying no. I wouldn't say so because there are hentai that are original works. But then again, the constant of Rule 34 that we should be like
Oh my
plugging into
gosh.
every equation is if it exists, there is porn of it. And if it itself is porn, then it exists and there is porn of it.
It is Rule 34 of itself. Original hentai becomes Rule 34 of itself.
Yo, I am literally mind-gasming right now.
Wow. Move over, Oppenheimer. We got some new mind bombs here. I'll probably cut that.
Oh my God.
I think I'll cut that one. Talking about the spirit of Rule 34, it's like fan fiction. To take stuff, rooted in reality, the original source material, for example, and being able to throw your own imagination into it, that has to be the main appeal of Rule 34. Because again, we said in the beginning, someone might say, dang nabbit, why would you watch some Teen Titans Chinese cartoon porn when I can go over to the hub any other day? It's because they don't quite understand that. Part of it is the taboo. I think we talked recently about how back in the old days, it was all about the ankle.
True, we did mention that before. That's true.
Because the ankle was historically covered up. Why do people like feet? Well, I think it has to do with, it's a taboo. Not so much a taboo, but your feet are usually covered, right? Same thing with the ankles. But as time went on and ankles became more shown, it became less of a fetish. If throughout human history, sandals were more common than shoes, maybe there would be less foot fetishists.
That is true. So what you're saying is if there was more boobs in Teen Titans, there would be less porn.
Yes, that's a very important point. It's like if, for example, if Starfire and Raven were constantly shown in like very skimpy and also very sexual scenarios, let's say, I would say that the Rule 34 fervor for them would be not as much. Same thing with Frankie from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Right? If in the source material, if Frankie was just a big slut, I would surmise to say you'd be less interested in the Rule 34. But it's because of the taboo, not necessarily taboo, but the dichotomy of its innocence drives.
No, I understand what you're saying.
More.
I completely understand. There's this awkward balance, this vector, I'd even go as far as to say.
Okay.
Where on one side of the scale, if they're not sexualized at all, then there isn't going to be that much Rule 34 of them. And if they're over-sexualized, well, then there's no need for Rule 34 of them. It really needs to hit that sweet spot.
That perhaps you say
that matrix,
that G spot,
right at the core
of Rule 34-ness.
That G spot.
Yes. Do you have any closing remarks for the students here?
Drop a follow, subscribe, leave a like. Everyone support
There
Professy.
it is.
What an absolute legend.
There it is.
Beautiful, man.